She went on a date with her boyfriend and woke up married to a ruthless Korean Mafia boss. But 8 years ago, she'd saved his life without knowing his real name. Now he's tracked her down, trapped her in a gilded cage, and she has no idea that the man who owns her is the same boy she once rescued from death. This is Grace and Jae-won's story. Subscribe and stay until the end to see if she discovers the truth. Grace's hands trembled as she stared at the marriage certificate, her signature mocking her from the paper. This couldn't be real. I suggest you sit before you fall down. She whirled toward the voice. A man stood in the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered in a black suit. Dark eyes studied her with cold detachment. Who the hell are you? Her voice came out stronger than she felt. Where's Marcus? He stepped inside, closing the door. Your boyfriend is gone? He couldn't pay his debts, so he paid with you instead. What? Grace backed toward the window. The last thing she remembered was dinner. Marcus acting strange. The wine tasted bitter, then nothing. Marcus owed me $500,000. When I came to collect, he offered an alternative. His gaze swept over her. You. The words hit like a physical blow. You can't just... People aren't payment. This is kidnapping. I'll call the police. You'll do nothing. He pulled out his phone and turned it toward her. Footage showed a wedding hall. Grace in the dress she had on now, eyes glazed, a man slipping a ring on her finger. Her hand being guided to sign papers. Legal and binding. You married me 4 hours ago. Her knees buckled. She gripped the windowsill. 8 months with Marcus, and he'd sold her like property. This can't be legal. It is. He moved to the window. In the light, she saw him clearly. Mid-20s, Korean, sharp features. Scars on his knuckles. A faint scar near his hairline. Grace looked at him. Something about him was familiar. She felt like she had seen him before, but couldn't remember where. What's your name? Choi Jae-won. Different from the name he gave her 8 years ago. Part of him wanted her to remember him, while the other part was happy she didn't. Mr. Choi Jae-won, I'm not collateral, she said, forcing strength into her voice. You are now, and you'll stay here, play the role of my wife, or your family pays the price Marcus couldn't. Ice flooded her veins. My family? Chidi Okeke, 22, an engineering student at SNU. Your mother runs a restaurant in Lagos. Your father passed away 2 years ago. He stepped closer. Marcus's debt is cleared, but if you make this difficult, I'll transfer it to your brother. How long do you think Chidi would survive owing me $500,000? The threat was clear. This man could destroy everyone she loved. Grace searched his face for any hint of mercy. Found none. What do you expect from me? You'll live here, attend events as my wife when required, present yourself appropriately, nothing more. Nothing more, she repeated bitterly. This is a transaction. Marcus owed a debt. You cleared it. You provide legitimacy to my public image. I provide protection. Grace drew herself up. And if I refuse? He showed her his phone again, a photo of Chidi leaving class, laughing with friends, completely unaware his life hung in the balance. Your choice. But choose carefully. She looked at her brother's face. She'd spent her career saving lives. She wouldn't let Chidi pay for Marcus's sins. Fine, I'll play your game, but I will never stop looking for a way out. His expression didn't change. There are clothes in the closet. Dinner is at 8. He moved to the door without looking back. Don't be late. The door closed. Grace collapsed onto the bed. Her pulse hammered in her throat. Elevated heart rate, shallow breathing, early signs of shock. She forced herself to breathe slowly, clinically. She needed to think clearly. The marriage was legal. She'd been drugged. Jae-won had the power and means to hurt her family. He could make any challenge disappear. And Chidi, she couldn't risk him. Grace crossed to the closet. Designer dresses, suits, shoes, all her exact size. He'd planned this meticulously. Her reflection caught her eye in the full-length mirror, still wearing the wrinkled dress from dinner. The diamond ring on her finger glittered, at least 2 carats, flawless cut. Expensive, beautiful, wrong. She tried to remove it. It wouldn't budge past her knuckle. He'd sized it perfectly. She moved to the bathroom. Marble everywhere, a soaking tub, expensive toiletries. She turned on the tap, letting hot water fill the tub while she stripped off the ruined dress. The water should have been soothing, but she felt only cold rage. Every escape scenario ended the same way, with Jae-won's casual threat to destroy her family. Fine. She'd play the part. But she'd also watch, learn, and find his weaknesses. Every criminal had them. She just needed time. 20 minutes later, she got dressed and dried her natural hair, pulled it into a low bun. Minimal makeup, just enough to hide the exhaustion and fear. The clock read 7:55. Grace took a breath, opened the bedroom door, and followed the sound of classical music through the penthouse. The dining room looked romantic. Footsteps approached from another entrance. Jae-won appeared, changed into a dark button-down and tailored slacks. He looked almost ordinary, almost safe. Grace knew better. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the nearest chair. She sat, keeping her spine straight, her hands folded in her lap. He took the head of the table, close enough to speak comfortably, far enough to feel the distance. "The dress suits you." Grace said nothing. "You're angry. Understandable, but fighting me accomplishes nothing. You expect me to just accept this? I expect you to be smart. You're a nurse. You understand triage. Right now, cooperation is the only option that keeps your brother safe." Grace's jaw tightened. He was right. She hated that he was right. Jae-won pressed a button on the table. Plates appeared, staff moving like shadows, gone before Grace could track them. Korean beef, perfectly grilled with banchan and rice. Grace's stomach twisted with hunger she didn't want to feel. "Eat," Jae-won said. "I'm not hungry." "Your hands are shaking. Low blood sugar. Eat." The clinical observation irritated her. Grace picked up her chopsticks, forcing down a bite. The food was excellent. She hated that too. Hating him would be easier if everything wasn't so perfectly controlled. "Tell me about yourself," Jae-won said. She looked up sharply. "Why?" "We're married. I should get to know my wife. You already know everything about me and my family. I know facts, not who you are." Grace set down her chopsticks. "You want to know who I am? I'm someone who saves lives for a living, who works doubles to help people, who believed the world had some goodness in it." Her voice turned cold. "And now I'm property of a criminal who thinks everything has a price." Jae-won's expression remained neutral. "Marcus set the price. I simply collected. By enslaving me. By clearing a debt. There's a difference. Not to me." They ate in hostile silence. Grace forced down food mechanically while studying him. The way he held his chopsticks, educated, refined. The expensive watch on his wrist. The controlled way he moved, like violence was always just beneath the surface, and those scars on his knuckles. She'd seen injuries like that before. "Where?" "You keep staring at my hands," Jae-won said without looking up. Grace met his eyes. "Professional habit." "And what else do you observe professionally?" "That you're used to absolute control, that you don't tolerate questions, that whatever gave you those scars happened when you were younger, but you still carry it." Something dangerous flickered in Jae-won's eyes. "Careful, Grace. Observation is useful. Psychoanalysis is dangerous." "Is that a threat?" "It's a boundary." He stood abruptly, dropping his napkin on the table. "Finish your dinner. You already know your room." "How generous. My own cell." Jae-won paused at the doorway, his back to her. "This arrangement doesn't have to be painful. Cooperate and you'll find I can be reasonable." "And if I don't cooperate?" He looked back, his expression carved from ice. "Then you'll find I can be something else entirely." He left without another word. Grace sat alone in the candlelight, her first dinner as a married woman complete. The food sat heavy in her stomach. The ring felt heavier on her finger. She pushed back from the table and walked through the penthouse, counting exits, memorizing layouts. She got to her room, the door, and leaned against it, finally letting the facade crack. Her hands shook, tears burned behind her eyes, but she wouldn't cry. Not yet. Crying meant accepting this was real. Instead, she crossed to the window and stared out at Seoul's lights as she pressed her palm against the cold glass. One day down, she would survive this. Find a way out. And when she did, Choi Jae-won would regret ever hearing her name. Grace woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For 3 blissful seconds, she forgot where she was. Then the weight of the ring on her finger brought reality crashing back. She sat up, her body aching from tension she'd carried through the night. The clock read 6:30, her usual wake-up time for morning shifts at the hospital. The hospital, her job, her life. Grace grabbed her phone from the nightstand. Dead, of course. She searched the room for a charger and found one plugged in by the desk. While her phone powered on, she moved to the window. Her phone buzzed to life. 17 missed calls from Chidi. 8 from her mother, dozens of texts. Grace's finger hovered over Chidi's name. What could she say? I'm fine. I just got married to a gangster who accepted me as payment for my ex-boyfriend's gambling debt. A knock at the door made her jump. Mrs. Choi? A man's voice, different from Jae-won's. Breakfast is ready. Grace looked down at herself, still wearing the dress from dinner, now wrinkled from sleep. I need a moment. Of course, Mr. Choi expects you in 20 minutes. Expects. Like she was an employee, a possession. Grace showered quickly, the hot water doing nothing to wash away the reality of her situation. She dressed in jeans and a simple blouse from the closet, refusing to wear anything too elaborate. Small rebellions were all she had. She found the dining room again. Jae-won sat at the head of the table. He looked up when she entered. You're 3 minutes late. I wasn't aware I was on a schedule. You are now. He gestured to the seat beside him, not across from him like last night. Closer, more intimate. Sit. Grace remained standing. I need to call my brother. He's worried. I'm aware. Her blood ran cold. You've been monitoring my phone? I monitor everything in this house. Sit down, Grace. Breakfast is getting cold. She wanted to throw something at him. Instead, she sat, keeping her spine rigid. Plates appeared, Western breakfast this time, eggs, toast, fruit. The staff moved like ghosts again, and Grace wondered how much they knew, if they cared. You'll call Chidi after breakfast, Jae-won said. You'll tell him you're fine, that you took a last-minute trip, nothing more. He won't believe that. Make him believe it, unless you'd prefer I have a conversation with him instead. The threat was clear. Grace picked up her fork, her appetite gone. I need to go to work, she said. My shift starts at 2. Jae-won didn't look up from his tablet. You don't work there anymore. Excuse me? I called the hospital this morning, told them you resigned for personal reasons. They were disappointed but understanding. Grace's fork clattered against her plate. You had no right? I have every right. You're my wife. Your schedule conflicts with my needs. Your needs? Grace stood, anger overriding caution. I have patients who depend on me, people who need... They'll find another nurse. Jae-won finally looked at her, his expression impassive. You have a new role now. No. Grace's hands trembled with rage. You can threaten my family. You can force me to live here. But you don't get to destroy my career. That's mine. Something flickered in Jae-won's eyes. Surprise? Maybe. Or respect. Are you finished? I'm just starting. He stood, and Grace suddenly remembered how much bigger he was, how easily he could hurt her if he wanted. But he simply walked to a cabinet, opened it, and pulled out an envelope. I had this prepared. He handed it to her. Open it. Grace took the envelope warily. Inside was a check made out to Seoul National University Hospital. 5 million won. What is this? A donation, in your name, for the emergency department. Jae-won returned to his seat. I also established a scholarship fund for nursing students. Another 5 million. Your director was very grateful. Grace stared at the check. 10 million won. That was a lot of money. The donation would help dozens of patients fund students who desperately needed it. But it was also control. He'd taken her choice and replaced it with charity in her name. Another cage, just prettier. And she hated that part of her, was grateful. Why? Because you're right. Your career is yours. But you can't go back to that hospital. Too many questions. Too much exposure. He gestured to the envelope. So I gave you a different legacy there. Something that matters. I can find you work elsewhere, Jae-won continued. Consulting. Something that doesn't require regular shifts or public visibility. How generous. It's practical. A wife with her own career is more believable than a housewife who appeared overnight. He took a sip of coffee. And I imagine you'll go insane without work. That's inconvenient for both of us. Grace sat slowly, her mind racing. He was offering her something, a compromise. It wasn't freedom, but it was more than she'd expected. What kind of consulting? Medical advisor for my businesses. Discreet health expertise. You mean illegal? I mean morally grey. There's a difference. Not to me. Then you'll have to adjust your perspective, Grace. He returned to his tablet. Finish your breakfast. We have an appointment at 11. Grace forced down a few bites, her mind spinning. What kind of appointment? Shopping. You need appropriate clothes for occasions you will accompany me to. I have clothes. You have jeans and nursing scrubs. You need a wardrobe befitting the wife of someone in my position. He glanced at her. It's non-negotiable. Grace gritted her teeth. Fine. They ate in tense silence. Grace's phone buzzed in her pocket. Chidi again. Jae-won heard it. Now would be a good time for that call. Grace pulled out her phone, her hands shaking. Jae-won nodded toward the living room. Privacy. But remember, I'm listening. She walked to the massive windows overlooking the city, pressed call, and waited. Grace! Chidi's voice was frantic. Oh my God, where have you been? I've been calling. I'm fine, Chidi, I'm sorry. I should have called sooner. What happened? Marcus said you broke up, that you took off somewhere. Are you okay? Marcus, that lying bastard had covered his tracks. Yeah, we broke up. It's complicated. I needed to get away for a bit. Where are you? Grace looked at Jae-won, who was watching her from the dining room. With a friend. I just need some space to think. I promise I'm okay. I just need a few days. I'll explain everything soon. This isn't like you. You don't just disappear. Grace's throat tightened. I know, I'm sorry. How are your classes? Chidi hesitated, then launched into a complaint about everything. She listened, letting his familiar voice ground her. For a few minutes, she could pretend everything was normal. I have to go, she said finally. But I'll call you again soon, I promise. Grace, wait! I love you, Chidi. Tell Mom I'm fine. She hung up before he could argue. The phone felt heavy in her hand. Jae-won appeared beside her, silent as a shadow. Well done. Don't. Grace turned away. Don't act like I did something good. I just lied to my brother. You protected him. There's a difference. You keep saying that. There's a difference. Like it justifies everything. Jae-won was quiet for a moment. The car will be ready in an hour. Wear something comfortable for shopping. He walked away. She spent the next hour pacing her room, each footstep marking time in her new prison. When the knock came, she was almost grateful for the distraction. Grace slid into the back seat of the car, Jae-won beside her. A driver, stone-faced, silent, navigated the streets while Grace stared out the window. Where exactly are we going? She asked. Cheongdam-dong, designer boutiques. I don't need designer clothes. Yes, you do. You need to look the part. Grace turned to face him. And what part is that exactly? Trophy wife? Purchased bride? Jae-won's jaw tightened. Respected partner. Respected. Grace laughed bitterly. You bought me with a gambling debt and you want people to think I'm respected? No one will know how we met. As far as Soul Society is concerned, we're a normal couple. There's nothing normal about this. Then act well enough that people believe the lie. He looked at her directly. I need you to be convincing. Can you do that? Grace held his gaze. Do I have a choice? No. Then I guess I'll be convincing. The car pulled up to a sleek boutique, all glass and marble. A woman in an elegant suit waited at the entrance. The owner, probably, given the way she bowed deeply when Jae-won emerged. Mr. Choi, such a pleasure. Everything is ready as you requested. Jae-won placed a hand on Grace's lower back, guiding her inside. The touch sent electricity through her. The boutique was empty except for staff. Private shopping, of course. My wife needs a complete wardrobe, Jae-won said. Evening wear, business casual, formal events, everything. The owner's eyes gleamed. Of course. Please, come this way. Grace let herself be led to a private fitting room while assistants appeared with dresses, suits, shoes. The owner, Madam Kim, had a practiced eye, pulling pieces that actually suited Grace's style and skin tone. You have wonderful proportions, Madam Kim said, holding up a deep emerald gown. This would look stunning on you. Grace touched the fabric. Silk, impossibly soft. Try it on, Jae-won said from the doorway. Grace spun around. Do you mind? Not at all. He settled into a chair, making it clear he planned to watch. I'm not modelling for you. You're my wife? I have every right to see what I'm paying for. The casual possession in his voice made Grace's skin crawl, but Madam Kim was watching with professional interest, and making a scene would accomplish nothing. Fine. He wanted a show? She'd give him one. Grace took the emerald gown into the changing room, emerging a few minutes later. The dress hugged her curves perfectly, the neckline elegant without being revealing. She looked expensive, untouchable. Jae-won's expression shifted, something flickering behind his controlled facade. Turn around. Grace turned slowly, letting him see the full effect. That one, he said, his voice slightly rougher. Definitely that one. She went back to the changing room, reached for her own clothes. Through the thin door, she heard Jae-won's phone ring. What? His voice was sharp. A pause. When? Another pause. Longer. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Grace froze, listening. Handle it until I arrive. What? Don't let him leave. Footsteps moved away. Madam Kim, I need to step out. Keep my wife comfortable. I'll return shortly. Grace's heart hammered. She cracked the door open slightly. The main showroom was empty except for Madam Kim, who was examining a suit across the room. Then a staff member called for Madam Kim. Yes, I'll be right there. She hurried toward her office. Grace heard the back office door close. She was alone. Her mind raced. The boutique had a service exit. She'd spotted it when they first arrived. Emergency exits always called to her, a nurse's habit. Map your escapes. This was insane. But if she didn't try now, when would she get another chance? Grace grabbed her phone, left everything else. No time. She slipped out of the changing room, the emerald dress still on. The service exit was 20 feet away. 10 feet. 5. Her hand hit the metal bar. The door opened. She ran. The service corridor led to an alley. Grace emerged into Cheongdam-dong's busy streets, luxury shops lining every block. People stared at the woman in an evening gown, running barefoot across the pavement. The concrete was cold and rough against her feet. Subway. She needed the subway. Grace pushed through crowds of shoppers, her dress drawing more attention with every step. A subway entrance appeared ahead. She dove down the stairs. No wallet. No money. Damn it! Excuse me! Grace grabbed a woman's arm. Please, I need money for a ticket. I'll pay you back, I promise. The woman looked terrified and hurried away. Here. An older man held out a transit card. You look like you need help. Grace nearly cried. Thank you so much. She swiped through the turnstile and ran for the platform. A train was boarding. She squeezed through the closing doors. Safe. For now. Grace collapsed into a seat, breathing hard. Her reflection in the window showed a wild-eyed woman in a designer gown, barefoot, hair dishevelled. People were staring. She needed to get to Chidi. Warn him. Maybe together they could... Her phone buzzed. Jae-won. She declined the call. It rang again. Declined. A text appeared. Grace, stop running. How did he know already? It had been less than 5 minutes. The train pulled into the next station. Grace bolted through the doors before they fully opened. She ran up the stairs into an underground shopping complex. Crowds everywhere, good. She could blend in, except she couldn't. The dress was like a beacon. Grace ducked into a department store, weaving through racks of clothing. Behind her, she caught glimpses of 2 men, coordinated, communicating through earpieces. They weren't trying to catch her, they were herding her. Grace found the restroom and locked herself in a stall, her chest heaving. Her phone buzzed constantly. 17 missed calls. 20. 25. Another text. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Then, think about Chidi. Grace's hands shook. Her baby brother completely safe because he had no idea what she'd done, what she was risking. She couldn't risk him. She stared at her phone. If Jae-won was tracking it, why weren't they breaking down the bathroom door right now? Unless they were waiting. Letting her think she had time, making the recapture even more demoralizing. Grace waited 5 minutes. 10. When she emerged from the stall, the bathroom was empty. She splashed water on her face, tried to calm down. Through the bathroom door, she could hear the normal sounds of the mall. Maybe they'd lost her. Maybe. Grace pushed open the door and stopped. Through the department store's glass front, parked at the curb, was the black sedan. Jae-won stood beside it, arms crossed. Even from this distance, she could see the cold fury in his expression. Grace backed up, but hands gripped her arms from behind. Madam, one said quietly, Mr. Choi is waiting. Let go of me. Please don't make a scene. Come with us. They walked her toward the exit, gentle but unyielding. Shoppers stared. Grace's mind raced through options. Scream, fight, run. But all of them ended with Chidi in danger. The automatic doors opened. Seoul's evening air hit her face. Jae-won didn't move as they approached, just watched her with those dark, unreadable eyes. Get in the car! Grace stood her ground. No, his jaw tightened. Get in the car! Or I make a phone call to Chidi right now and explain exactly how much debt he's just inherited. The threat broke her. Grace wrenched free from the guards and climbed into the sedan, the emerald dress tangling around her legs. Jae-won slid in beside her, the door closed, the driver pulled into traffic. Silence filled the car like poison. Grace stared out the window, refusing to look at him. Her feet were bleeding from running on concrete. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only exhaustion and despair. That was incredibly stupid, Jae-won said finally. I won't stop trying. Yes, you will. Grace turned to face him. You can't watch me every second of every day. Can't I? He held up his phone, showing a tracking app. A red dot pulsed on a map. Your phone. I've been tracking it since the moment I gave it back to you. He gestured to her hand. The ring has a GPS chip. So do the earrings. He paused, letting it sink in. You were never free, Grace. Not for 1 second. Grace looked down. The diamond studs she hadn't even noticed. The ring she couldn't remove. Every breath she'd taken. Every step he'd been watching. You made a scene, Jae-won continued, his voice ice. Drew attention. Do you know how many people photographed you running in that dress? How many questions that raises? I don't care about your reputation. You should, because when people ask questions about my wife's erratic behaviour, I have to provide answers. And those answers affect you. Affect Chidi. Grace's nails dug into her palms. So what are my consequences? You've already taken everything. Jae-won turned to face her fully, and something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Not everything, but keep testing me, Grace, and you'll find out exactly how much more I can take. Is that a threat? It's a promise. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. You think you're trapped now? You have your own room, your privacy, your phone. All of that is privilege, not right. Push me again, and I'll show you what trapped really means. Grace held his gaze, even though fear clawed at her throat. You want me to be your perfect, obedient wife? Then you shouldn't have bought someone with a spine. Something shifted in his expression, anger mixed with something else. Respect, frustration. I didn't buy you. I accepted payment of a debt. Semantics. Important ones. Jae-won sat back, putting distance between them. Marcus owed me. He chose how to pay. I simply collected. You could have said no. His jaw tightened. Yes, I could have. Then why didn't you? Jae-won turned to the window, effectively ending the conversation. Because I didn't. The rest of the drive passed in hostile silence. When they pulled up to the penthouse, Grace didn't wait for the driver. She shoved the door open and stalked toward the entrance. Jae-won caught her arm, stopping her. One more thing. She tried to pull away. His grip tightened, not painful, but immovable. You will not attempt to escape again. You will not contact Chidi beyond supervised calls. You will not draw attention to yourself or this marriage. His voice was deadly calm. Are we clear? Crystal, good. He released her. Go to your room. Clean yourself up. Dinner is at 8. Grace walked toward the elevator, every muscle screaming in protest. The dress was ruined, her feet were bleeding, and she'd accomplished nothing except proving how thoroughly he controlled her. The elevator doors closed. Grace leaned against the wall and finally let the tears come. She'd been so close. For 10 minutes, she'd breathed free air, made her own choices, ran toward something instead of being trapped. And it had all been an illusion. Grace looked at the ring on her finger, the GPS tracker disguised as a symbol of marriage. She couldn't even take it off to shower. The elevator reached her floor. She walked to her room and closed the door. Her reflection in the mirror showed the truth. She looked like she'd been running for her life. Because she had been. But Jae-won was right. She'd made a scene, created problems, and gained nothing. Grace peeled off the ruined dress and stepped into the shower, letting hot water wash away the blood and dirt. But it couldn't wash away the reality. She was trapped, truly, completely trapped. And the worst part? A small, treacherous part of her had felt alive while running, had felt something other than numb resignation, even if it was only fear. Grace dried off and dressed in simple clothes, leggings, a soft shirt, armour of a different kind. When she emerged, she found a first aid kit on her bed. No note, just the kit. She bandaged her feet mechanically, her mind elsewhere. The escape had taught her something. Jae-won's security was sophisticated, but not perfect. He'd tracked her phone and jewellery, but he'd been minutes behind her at the mall. If she'd been smarter, if she'd ditched the phone and jewellery first, she might have made it, next time. Because there would be a next time. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week. But eventually he'd make a mistake, let his guard down, underestimate her. And when he did, she'd be ready. Grace looked at the ring on her finger, the tiny GPS chip somewhere inside the band. For now, she'd play his game, be the obedient wife, learn his patterns, his weaknesses, his world. But she wouldn't stop fighting. She couldn't. A week had passed since Grace's failed escape, 7 days of cold silence, mechanical obedience, and careful distance. She spoke to Jae-won only when necessary, ate meals in her room, and spent her time reviewing the medical files he'd given her. She knew what they really were. Money laundering fronts, shell companies. The paperwork was clean, but the pattern was obvious to anyone paying attention. Grace didn't care. The work kept her mind occupied. Jae-won watched her withdraw with visible frustration, but he said nothing. They existed in the same space like ghosts, circling each other in hostile silence. Until the night, everything changed. Grace was reading in bed when the commotion started. Shouting, heavy footsteps, urgent voices speaking rapid Korean. She opened her door and froze. 2 of Jae-won's men were half carrying, half dragging a third man through the penthouse. Blood soaked his shirt dripped onto the white marble floor. He was young, maybe 25, and his face was sheet white with shock. Every instinct Grace had spent years honing roared to life. She ran toward them. What happened? The men looked up, startled. One stammered in broken English. "Shot! We don't! Hospital can't!" "Put him on the couch! Now!" Grace's voice cut through their panic like a scalpel. "Someone get me towels, hot water, and a first aid kit. Move!" They scrambled to obey. Grace dropped to her knees beside the wounded man, her hands already assessing. Shoulder wound, left side. Entry wound visible, no exit. Bullet still inside. Bleeding heavily, but not arterial. She could work with this. "What's your name?" she asked in Korean, keeping her voice calm. "Min-ho," he gasped. "Min-ho, I'm Grace. I'm a nurse. You're going to be fine, but I need you to stay still." Footsteps approached. Jae-won's voice sharp with tension. "What's happening?" Grace didn't look up. "He's been shot. Shoulder wound. I need supplies. Tell your men to hurry up." Jae-won's voice changed, decisive, controlled. He barked orders in Korean to his men. Grace ripped open Min-ho's shirt, exposing the wound. Blood welled up, but she'd seen worse. Much worse. "You're doing great, Min-ho. Keep breathing for me." Supplies appeared. Grace's hands moved with practiced efficiency, cleaning, assessing, applying pressure. The world narrowed to the wound, the patient, the work. This was what she was made for. Jae-won stood nearby, watching. Grace could feel his eyes on her, but she ignored him. "The bleeding's under control," she said after 10 minutes, "but I can't extract the bullet here. He needs proper surgical equipment, imaging to locate it exactly, antibiotics to prevent infection." "No hospitals," Jae-won said immediately. "The doctor is on the way." Grace's jaw tightened. "I can stabilize him till then, but I can't fix this completely." Jae-won pulled out his phone, made a call, rapid Korean. When he hung up, he crouched beside her. "The doctor is close." Grace adjusted the pressure bandage. "Min-ho, stay with me. You're doing great." Min-ho's eyes were glazed with pain, but he nodded weakly. Minutes stretched like hours. Grace monitored his pulse, his breathing, his colour. Jae-won stayed close, handing her supply she asked. They worked in sync without speaking, and Grace hated how natural it felt. When the private doctor arrived with a portable medical kit, Grace gave a thorough briefing. The doctor looked impressed. "You saved his life," he said in English. "Another hour, and he would have bled out." They loaded Min-ho onto a stretcher. As they carried him toward the door, he reached out weakly and caught Grace's hand. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." Something in Grace's chest cracked. "You're welcome. Rest now." The door closed. Silence fell. Grace looked down at her hands. Blood covered her palms, her fingers, dried under her nails. The adrenaline that had kept her focus started to drain away, leaving her shaking. She'd saved him. For the first time in a while, she'd felt like herself, and she'd done it in a gangster's penthouse while being held prisoner. "Grace!" She looked up. Jae-won stood a few feet away, holding a damp towel and a glass of water. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You saved his life." Grace took the towel mechanically, began wiping blood from her hands. "It's what I do, what I'm trained for." "You didn't have to help, not after everything." Grace's hands stilled. She looked at him directly. He was bleeding, dying. Nothing else mattered. Something shifted in Jae-won's expression. Respect, maybe, or understanding. He crouched in front of her, took the towel, and began cleaning the blood from her hands himself. The gesture was so unexpectedly gentle that Grace couldn't move. His hands were careful, thorough, removing every trace of blood from her fingers. "This is what you took from me," Grace said quietly. "This feeling, being useful, saving people." Jae-won's hands paused. When he spoke, His voice was rough, I know. For the first time, he sounded genuinely regretful. Grace pulled her hands back. I need to shower. She stood and walked toward her room. The hot water should have been soothing, but Grace's hands still shook. She scrubbed her skin until it was raw, watching pink-tinged water circle the drain. She'd saved a life tonight. Grace turned off the water and stepped out, wrapping herself in a towel. She was exhausted, but too wired to sleep. Her robe hung on the back of the door. She reached for it, then froze. Her phone. She'd left it in the living room. Grace belted the robe tightly and opened her door. The penthouse was quiet. Jae-won's men had cleaned up the blood. Everything looked pristine again, like nothing had happened. She padded quietly across the marble floor toward the living room. Movement caught her eye. Jae-won's bedroom door stood open. Grace glanced inside automatically, and her world stopped. Jae-won stood with his back to her, changing his shirt. He'd stripped off the blood-spattered clothes, and his torso was bare. Scars covered his skin, old wounds, some faded, some still visible, his knuckles, his ribs, the faint line on his lower back. But one scar seized Grace's attention completely. Left shoulder blade, a surgical repair scar, distinctive pattern, the world tilted. 8 years ago. A rainy night in Seoul. An alley. A young man crumpled on the ground, bleeding. Grace dragged him to her tiny apartment because he begged her. No hospitals, no police. His shoulder torn open from a beating. Grace stitched the wound with trembling hands while he bit down on a belt to keep from screaming. Min-jae was the name he gave her. His pain-filled eyes, his broken thank you, the way he disappeared 3 days later without explanation, the scar she'd left on his shoulder, the distinctive pattern she'd created as a nursing student. Grace gasped audibly. Jae-won spun around, their eyes locked. Grace's voice came out broken, barely a whisper. Min-jae. Jae-won went completely still. For 3 heartbeats, neither of them moved. Then Grace stepped into his room without thinking, her eyes fixed on the scar. You're him, the one I saved 8 years ago. She moved closer, staring at the shoulder wound she'd stitched with her own hands, then at his face. Then at all the other scars she remembered treating, the knuckles, the ribs, the forehead. It was you. Jae-won didn't deny it, didn't move, just watched her with those dark eyes. Grace's voice rose, fury and disbelief crashing through her. You knew. When Marcus offered me as payment, you knew exactly who I was. Silence. How long? Grace demanded. How long have you been watching me? Since then? 8 years? Jae-won's voice was quiet, controlled. Yes. Grace staggered back like he'd struck her. Did you set Marcus up? Did you create his debt just to get to me? No, but when he offered me, Grace's voice cracked. You jumped at the chance. You saw an opportunity to own the woman who saved you. Jae-won's jaw tightened. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Grace was shouting now, tears streaming down her face. Tell me! I saved your life! I risked everything to help you, and you've been stalking me for 8 years? Planning this? I wasn't planning anything, Jae-won said, his voice rising to match hers. But when Marcus walked into my office with your photo offering you to clear his debt, you took me, Grace finished bitterly, like I was something you were owed. I saved you from him? By enslaving me to you instead? Grace laughed through her tears. You think that's better? You think that's what I would have wanted? Jae-won stepped closer. You don't understand. Then make me understand. Grace's voice broke. Make me understand how the man I saved, the man who looked at me with gratitude and called me his angel, became the monster who bought me like property. The words hung in the air between them like shattered glass. Jae-won's shoulders sagged. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet. Sit, please, let me explain. I don't want to sit down. I know what you want, and you'll have it. But first, let me tell you the truth. All of it. Grace wanted to refuse, to walk out, but she'd spent 8 years wondering about the boy who'd disappeared from her apartment. She needed to know. She sat on the edge of his bed. Jae-won stayed standing, keeping distance between them. After you saved me, he began, I stayed hidden for 3 days. I was going to leave Seoul, start over somewhere my family couldn't find me. He touched his shoulder absently. But they found me anyway, dragged me back. Grace said nothing, just listened. They gave me a choice. Come back, take my place in the organisation, or they'd kill everyone who'd helped me, starting with the woman who'd stitched me up in her apartment. Grace's breath caught. I couldn't let that happen. So I went back, became what they needed, a weapon, a tool. I did things. He closed his eyes. Things the boy you saved would never have done. You could have said something then. I couldn't. His voice turned bitter. What I could do was watch you from afar. I kept you safe from a distance. For 8 years. For 8 years. Jae-won opened his eyes. You were the last good thing that happened to me before I became this. Every time I did something terrible, I'd think about that night, about the way you looked at me, like I was worth saving, like I was human. Grace's throat tightened. He laughed without humour. Then Marcus Chen walked into my office, desperate and stupid, with a photo of his girlfriend, offering her to clear his gambling debts. Grace's hands clenched. I recognised you immediately, 8 years older, but still you, still Grace. Jae-won met her eyes. And I knew what Marcus was. I'd seen men like him before. He'd already sold you once. He'd do it again to someone worse, someone who wouldn't care if you lived or died. So you decided for me? Yes. No excuse. No justification. I told myself I was protecting you, saving you from him. But the truth is, his voice cracked. I wanted you in my life, even if it meant trapping you, even if it meant becoming a monster. Grace stood, anger and pain warring in her chest. You don't get to decide what's best for me, even if your intentions were good. I know. You took everything, my career, my freedom, my choices. You made me lie to my family. You turned me into property. Her voice rose. I saved you because it was the right thing to do. You repaid me by ruining my life. Jae-won didn't defend himself. You're right. You've been trapped too, by your family, your world. I understand that now. Grace's voice hardened. But you built my cage. That's the difference. I know. The admission deflated her rage. Grace sank back onto the bed, exhausted. What now? Jae-won crossed to his desk and opened a drawer. He pulled out legal documents and set them in front of her. Annulment papers. I had them drawn up 3 days ago. Grace stared at them. Jae-won picked up her phone, tapped several commands, and showed her the screen. GPS tracking disabled on your phone and your ring. He opened a banking app. This account is in your name, enough money to start over, job references from legitimate medical consultancies. Grace couldn't speak. You're free, Grace. No conditions, no threats. Your brother is safe. Your family is safe. I won't contact you again. Just like that? Just like that. He handed her a pen. I was wrong. I can't undo what I did, but I can stop doing it. Sign these. Leave. Build the life you should have had. Grace took the pen with shaking hands. What about you? Jae-won's expression was carefully neutral. I'll go back to being what I was before. Being a monster. Being alone. Something in Grace's chest twisted. She looked at the papers, at the signature line waiting for her name. This was what she wanted. Freedom. Her life back. So why did it feel like losing something? Did you ever really care? She asked quietly. Or was I just an obsession? Jae-won met her eyes. I cared. That was the problem. I cared so much I couldn't let you go, even when I should have. Grace signed the papers with steady hands, set down the pen, stood. I'll have everything arranged by tomorrow, Jae-won said. A moving service, apartment options, hospital recommendations. Grace nodded. She walked to the door, then paused. Goodbye. Goodbye, Grace. She left without looking back. 3 months later, Grace stood in her apartment. She'd rebuilt her life piece by piece. New job at a different hospital, back in the ER where she belonged. Regular calls with Chidi, who knew a version of the truth. Quick marriage, quick divorce, fresh start. Grace was healing, but every night she thought about him. The boy in the alley, the man in the penthouse. She'd never blocked his number. He never called. But there were signs. Anonymous donations to her hospital's ER. Chidi's tuition mysteriously paid in full. A new ultrasound machine that appeared in her department with no donor listed. Grace never acknowledged them, never reached out, but she never forgot either. On her day off, Grace sat in a coffee shop near her apartment, reading a novel. The bell above the door chimed. Grace looked up automatically and froze. Jae-won stood in the doorway. He looked different, less severe. His hair was less rigidly styled. He wore jeans and a sweater instead of a suit. He looked younger, more like the boy from 8 years ago. Their eyes met across the room. Grace's heart hammered against her ribs. He didn't approach immediately. Just stood there, uncertainty written across his features like he was asking silent permission. She should look away, should leave, should protect the freedom she'd fought for. Instead, she nodded slightly. Jae-won crossed the coffee shop and stopped at her table. Hi. Awkward silence stretched between them. I'm not here to intrude, Jae-won said. I wanted to see that you're okay. I am. I'm okay. Good, that's good. He shifted his weight. Wait. Grace closed her book. Sit, please. He sat carefully. Why are you really here? Grace asked. Jae-won took a breath. Because I want to do this right, the way I should have from the beginning. Grace's pulse quickened. Do what right? Get to know you, not as my wife, not as an obligation, just as Grace, the woman who saved my life, the woman I haven't been able to stop thinking about for 8 years. He met her eyes. I want to take you to dinner. A real date where you can say no, where you can leave any time, where you have all the choices I took from you. Grace stared at him. Are you asking me out? Yes, and you can say no. I'll leave and never bother you again if... I've been waiting for you. Jae-won stopped mid-sentence. What? Grace's eyes filled with tears. For 3 months, I've been waiting. I told myself I shouldn't, that I should move on, forget you, build a life without you in it. She wiped her eyes. But every time my phone rang, I hoped it was you. Every time the door opened, I looked up, thinking maybe... Her voice broke. I've been waiting for you to find me again, the right way this time. Jae-won's careful composure shattered, relief, hope, disbelief flooding his expression. Grace, I'm not ready to forgive everything. It's going to take time. But she reached across the table and took his hand firmly. I want to try. I want to see who we could be without the cages. Jae-won held her hand like she was precious. We'll go as slow as you need. Grace smiled through tears. They stood together. The coffee shop felt too small suddenly, too public for this moment. Grace looked up at him, really looked at him, and saw Min-jae looking back, the boy from the alley, the man he had become. But you should know, I'm still in that world. He met her eyes. That hasn't changed. Grace studied his face. Are you trying to scare me off? I'm trying to be honest. You deserve to know what you're choosing. She thought about the medical emergency in the penthouse, the wounded man she'd saved, the world Jae-won operated in. Dangerous, complicated, far from the simple life she'd imagined. I'm trained to save lives in impossible situations. I don't care if those lives are illegal businessmen. There are still lives. Something shifted in Jae-won's eyes. Wonder, maybe, or disbelief. You're serious. Grace, my world is dangerous. Your world is also where you are, and apparently... She smiled slightly. That's where I want to be too. Jae-won laughed, a real laugh, the first she'd heard from him. You're insane? Maybe. Or maybe I'm exactly the kind of insane you need. She didn't ask, didn't hesitate. Grace closed the distance and kissed him. For a heartbeat, Jae-won froze in shock. Then his arms came around her, careful but sure, holding her like she was the only real thing in his world. The kiss was soft but certain, not forced, not owned, chosen. Grace's hands framed his face, feeling the scar on his temple, the one she'd stitched years ago with trembling hands. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Grace whispered, that felt like a real beginning. Jae-won rested his forehead against hers, his voice rough with emotion. It is, I promise you. It is. So dinner? Dinner. Tomorrow night. I'll pick you up at 7. Grace smiled. Don't be late. One more kiss. This one full of promise and hope and everything they could become. 2 people who'd saved each other in different ways. 2 people choosing each other freely. 2 people starting again, the right way this time. The end. Thank you for staying till the end. If you enjoyed Grace and Jae-won's story, please like this video and subscribe for more dark romance tales. Drop a comment below telling me which moment hit you hardest. Was it the escape attempt, the scar recognition, or the coffee shop reunion? Your support helps me bring you more captivating stories every week. Let us know where you are viewing from, and I'll see you in the next one.